Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today is Wednesday, October 11, 2023, and this is What's Happening Dracut. This is our 58th episode, and we are coming to you live from our overly ostentatious studios located at 91 Mill Street here in Dracut, Massachusetts. You can follow us on Facebook. We are live there. And you can also follow us by going on DracutTV.org and anywhere else you think you can go, right?
YouTube.
YouTube. We got YouTube also. We're here to bring you all the things that are interesting politically in Dracut, as well as information that you may not get anywhere else. We're here and we are live, and we invite you to join in the fun by calling 978-957-4243. Anytime during the show, we'll get you on. You can give your opinion. You can push back on us. You can tell us we're a bunch of whatever you want to say, and we'll just let it roll because we accept it. I'm your host, John Zimini. I hope to keep this show stimulating and moving along as fast as possible. We have tonight in-house co-hosts in the form of one architect of Dracut, Massachusetts, who is the ace architect of Dracut, and he is our guy, Phil Thibault. How are you, Phil?
Hey, very well, thanks.
Very
Yourself?
good. Everything going well?
Everything's going well. This past weekend, I went to a wedding in Providence, Rhode Island.
Wow.
Nice city. I have to admit that.
Yeah.
I walked around nice and clean. Saw a building there that I thought for certain I was going to see Superman jumping over.
Oh.
And my aunt, who used to work in Providence, Rhode Island, when I posted that picture to Facebook, she said, "Oh, that's the Superman building." Apparently, it is the building that they took a photograph of. You know, it was the Daily Planet.
Really?
Yeah. So
Wow.
it was interesting.
So you were waiting for Superman to come off that building?
I was. There's a lot of Art Deco buildings in Providence. Beautiful city.
Did you go by any of the colleges there?
Johnson and Wales, walked past that one.
Providence.
I stayed in a very small area.
Yeah, Brown University is
Brown
down
University
there.
is
Yeah,
there,
it's
yeah.
very interesting town. It was a town in Rhode Island that is very well known for its political corruption, right?
Most of it. So I do have a story about that. That I had a job at the Providence Place Mall, and the building commissioner of Providence, I guess, was giving the developer a little issue. So I said to the director of construction for the Providence Place Mall, "Well, if you'd like, I could certainly talk to the building commissioner." He says, "You have nothing to offer him."
Whoa.
I got it.
Oh, I understand fully. And with that, we have our Teflon Don of Dracut Access Television, Gordy Scott, in the house.
How's everybody doing today?
Gordy, what's going on in your life these weeks?
Well, basketball's spinning up. We're getting ready preseason, so we've got the fall league going right now. Right now we are 1 win, 2 losses.
Okay.
We had a tough Lawrence. We were down by 2 or 3 points with like 24 seconds left, and we had a foul, so we ended up losing by 6 that game. But it was really competitive game. The game before that, we lost to Lowell by 20. They're really going to be good this year, Lowell.
Yeah.
And then we won our first game. We played, I forget who it was, Lowell Catholic or something like that. We won by 28 points.
So this is an off-season team, yeah.
Yeah. And 3 of our really good players we don't have because they're in football, and one of them got injured.
Oh, boy.
He's out for the season. So
Speaking of football, they won big the other day.
they did.
And who did they beat?
I forget.
Oh, you forget? Do you remember who they beat? Come on. I want somebody to give me some crap about this because it's my hometown.
Chelsea.
Yeah.
Chelsea?
Yes.
So somebody asked me, did you go to the game? I said, no, I didn't, but I watched it on cable. And I said, I couldn't tell you anybody from Chelsea. I've been out of there for over 30 years. So, I mean, I still have relatives that live there, and I have some friends down there, and I keep my ears to the ground on what's going on down there. But it's I wouldn't I wouldn't recognize anybody.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have a little fun about Central Catholic and St. John.
Oh yeah, all the time.
I mean, but
all the time.
yeah.
But
Yeah, so we do have 2 games. We have a game tomorrow night, so we play the Volk. So I'm predicting we're going to win that game. And then we play Tewksbury after that, which is a winnable game. And then we play North Andover.
how many off-season games do you have, like during
It's
preseason?
8. So we played a summer league. We played in 2 summer leagues where we started 0-7, then we went 8-3. We changed things up a little. I
Nice.
changed things up, the defense up a little bit. Then we went 8-3 the rest of the season. We made the playoffs. We won the first game, and then we lost in a
So
tough game in our second round.
You're doing an off-season, which the MIAA rules allow teams to do,
Yes.
as long as the coach.
Right, so I'm not
Of the high
involved with the
school.
coaching staff with the high school.
Yeah, as much as you'd like to be.
Right, correct.
But we know you'll never get there.
Correct.
Right?
That's
but the
okay.
bottom line is you're doing good things right now.
Right.
You're helping the
Kids
town
out,
out,
yep.
and you're not getting paid for it.
Right.
And somebody would think that you're crazy for
Right.
doing that.
A
But
lot of people tell, my wife is one of them that tells me I'm crazy.
Jen, he's a good guy. Let him continue. What about refereeing? You're going to be refereeing?
Yep, this will be my 20th year coming up this season. So
You're a youngster when it
yeah.
comes to years in high school.
no, but I'm
sports.
saying it's a milestone for me for officiating. So this will be
28
my
years.
20th year. I've already got some varsity assignments.
20th year.
20th, yep.
Wow.
As an official this year, yep. So I don't know. I don't know how many more years I'll be going. This may be the last.
Whoa.
There are rumblings that I may retire after this season.
Why?
So just it's I think it's time. It's just
Wow.
when Tom Brady plays his last season, he feels that he's getting old. And he's,
I don't get it. I mean, I'm gearing up for high school hockey too. And as you know, I coach at St. John's Prep, as Phil just alluded to. And I'm going to start my 40th season at St. John's Prep. Wow.
That's crazy.
Wow.
40th
40 years.
season.
But you know, John, as well as I do in the sport, it's just getting crazy now. The parents are nuts. And actually, COVID was one of the best times because there was no one in the stands. No, and the players were awesome. The coaches didn't say
Yeah.
a word. They were just happy to be playing basketball. But now it's back to normal.
But
and
do you
it's-
find that high school sports is less of a problem with
No.
parents? You don't?
No. And I'm at the point now where when they get out of unruly, I just go get the athletic director and say, that guy has to go.
That's it.
And then he paid for his ticket and he can watch from the parking
car,
lot.
out
Yep.
in the parking lot. That's the way it should be, you know?
Yep.
Folks, I'm sad to say Richard is a little under the weather tonight. So he called in sick this morning, called in real early. I just think he needed a day off or something.
Yeah, it could be.
So he's saying he's under the weather. So if you're watching, Richard, you can text us or you can follow us online. And we already got a bunch of people out there. We got some of our good friends and some of our not so good friends are watching. But before we get into the meat of the show, we're going to have a weather report, I believe, from Sean Kelly. So take it away, Sean.
Hi everyone, here's a quick look at the forecast starting off with tonight. Low temps in the 40s tonight with mostly clear conditions. Winds won't be that bad at 5 to 10 miles an hour. Then as we head into the day on Thursday, high temps in the low to mid 60s with mostly cloudy conditions. More clouds around, especially for the second part of the day. Winds are going to be coming out of the west at 5 to 10 miles an hour. Then as we head into Thursday night, temps back into the low 40s with clear conditions. Winds are going to be picking up out of the northwest at 10 to 15 miles an hour. Could even get a gust up to 20 miles an hour as we head into the overnight hours on Thursday night. Then as we head into Friday, this is going to be a pick of the week. High temps in the low to mid 60s with mostly sunny conditions. So it's going to be a beautiful day to get outside. Winds are going to be gusty at times coming out of the northwest once again at 10 to 15 miles an hour. But overall, a very beautiful day for October standards. And then as we head into the night on Friday night, temps are going to be dropping back into the 40s with mostly cloudy conditions. Here's a look at your exclusive 8-day forecast. A beautiful stretch of weather for Thursday and Friday. However, as we head to the weekend, especially the second part of the weekend, once again tracking some rain. This time it looks like it's going to be coming in on Sunday instead of Saturday with heavy rain likely as we head into Sunday and Monday. And that is it for now. Back to you guys in the studio.
On for that weather report. He is our ace weatherman. As you can see, everybody's an ace in my mind. But the bottom line is he's very good. Merrimack.
He's awesome. Merrimack,
Mill City.
Mill City weather.
Mill City
Mill
weather.
City weather. I'm losing my mind.
Yeah,
I
Sean's
just had a
awesome,
Joe
yeah.
Biden.
My
moment.
go-to weather, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, it is all the time. And Sean just got back from a nice
Vegas.
little vacation in Vegas. And what happens in Vegas
Stays in Vegas.
stays in Vegas. And we welcome you back, Sean. And we look forward. We got to get you in studio soon to come in and kibitz with the guys once again. Hey, we want to send out a special congratulations to Philip and Lorraine Thibault, who will be celebrating their
31st anniversary.
31st anniversary next week,
As,
right?
that's right. As her mother would used to say when her parents' anniversary would come up, that many years with the wrong man. It's like,
Yeah. Well,
but
you know,
she certainly keeps me grounded and tells me that's stupid when it's stupid.
well, I can honestly say, amongst all of us here, our wives weren't too bright when they hooked up with us.
Well,
Right.
Right? Because we all have baggage. I'm 33 years, a couple of weeks ago.
I'll be
in
25.
September.
I'll be
Imagine
May.
that. Nobody thought we would last 33 days, let alone 33 years. You know, but my lovely bride, she puts up with all of my foibles, and I'm sure Jen puts up with all of yours, as does Lorraine with you.
absolutely.
You know,
John, I know you won't be putting your heat on until November 1st.
you got that right. How do you know that?
My wife posted, said, did anyone turn their heat on?
No, that's right. I said, I did say not until November 1st.
I'll be lucky if I get to turn it on at all.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Lorraine is that type?
No, she just likes it cold.
She likes it cold. Oh,
Cold
yeah.
is cheap.
That's it. Hey, it is what it is, right?
With Bidenomics, we might have to not.
Oh,
turn it on.
God. Yeah, Bidenomics. Well, folks, I wanted to start the show off not too somber, but I just wanted to make a little commentary about the happenings in Israel over this last weekend. I have some very, very dear Jewish friends, and what happened over the weekend with Hamas going in to Israel and doing the atrocities that they are doing or they have done, beheading children, taking grandmothers who were actually in the Holocaust in the 1940s and making them sit in their wheelchairs with guns and bodies strewn all over the place. The scenes out of Israel have been horrific. And if anybody can even begin to think that Israel caused this, there's something seriously wrong with you. And my heart goes out to all of the citizens of Israel and those that are Jewish Americans here that are suffering with the loss of loved ones. I think I speak for the entire cast here that this is just a horrific time. Nobody ever thought that we would ever see this kind of atrocity again to the Jewish people. Gordy?
And there, we have American students, foreign students over there. I saw on TV today that there was 20 Americans flew over there for a wedding. Luckily, they were able to get out over the past couple days. It's just not. It's terrible what's happened, and I hope it ends soon. But I don't think that's going to be the case. But you can pray that it ends soon.
Phil?
Yeah, I think your choice of words that it is an atrocity is spot on. Because anybody would call it a tragedy, it is not a tragedy. It's an atrocity to humanity.
I mean, anyone that can stand shoulder to shoulder with Hamas and saying that, Hamas is suffering also, and to me, they're barbarians. And you treat barbarians the way they should be treated. And I am fully supportive of Israel's right to pursue every one of those perpetrators, hunt them down, and do what they have to do to eradicate the world with people like this. We'll get into this a little bit more as we get into the show, maybe at the end of the show, I hope, and we'll talk some more about that. If you watch Schindler's List and you've watched or you've watched that movie and you've seen reels of what's happened in Germany. This is just as bad. I never thought I would see the day when we would see kids, Palestinian kids, yelling at little Jewish kids that you're Jewish filth and things of that nature, and die Jew and things of that nature. It's just beyond my belief that this could have, that something like this could have
I think Golda Meir said it best when she was asked when all the fighting would stop. And her quote is, "The fighting will stop when they love their children more than they hate us."
That's right. That's true. Very true. So our hearts are out to Israel, and we'll get into some of the political ramifications of that later on in the show, so stay tuned. So for now, we're going to switch gears and get right into our agenda for the night. And one of the main things we wanted to talk about is a little bit about the zoning changes and review, talk a little bit about what's being done. Phil is our resident guy here, very familiar with most of that stuff, so we're going to let him get into it a little bit. What has the town done to educate the people a little bit more about these zoning changes that we're going to be required to vote on at town meeting?
I'll have to admit, I'm not sure. I kind of scratch my head when I'm trying to figure out how do ordinary citizens find out about this. Now, mind you, ordinary citizens aren't really interested in it until it affects their property.
Right. Yeah.
And then, it's the pitchforks and torches that come out. We kind of had the same problem when we were putting together the master plan. How do you get to the people? And we had visioning sessions that we were gathering information from people. Hey, we're going to be talking about this particular topic. How do you want to see the town react to this and that? And I think within a matter of a year and a half, we had 4 visioning sessions that were, here's a plan tonight. Then we had surveys that went around the town, and we reached out to different people in groups and tried to get as much information as we can. And I thought we were fairly successful with the master plan. Unfortunately, I really don't necessarily see that with the zoning bylaws, which is unfortunate.
Gordy, did you get that little postcard in the mail that came
did.
to everybody? And what did you make of that? What would you...
I went in the trash, as most people's probably did.
Yeah.
I did have a little QR code to scan, but I mean, with everyone's busy lives, with things going on in their lives, you just don't have time to, focus on this stuff. I get it, but when you read this stuff, well, I mean, I'll be honest. Like when I go to the town meeting, I get the warrant then and there. I'm not going up looking for it ahead of time to research it normally. Since I've been on this show, I do that. But normally a normal citizen's not going to do it. They're just going to show up, hey, I got to go to the town meeting. They're going to get this pamphlet. This is going to be the first time they're seeing the information. If you see what's in here, this is like hundreds of pages of zoning changes.
Right.
You don't have time to read. You don't have time to do it.
People don't have the time or the wherewithal to get involved with it. That's why it's important for groups like us to put out there what are the changes in there.
Yep.
What are some of the changes that they're talking about doing? And so, Phil, what are some of the changes?
So they're only taking about maybe a third of the zoning bylaw as it is currently written and presenting those particular changes to town meeting in November. And to some degree, they're considered the easier ones, if you want, the ones that would be have less controversy. Some of them, one in particular is solar voltaic facilities. So these are typically large ground-mounted or large roof-mounted facilities that are essentially solar farming. So the large facility, I believe, in our bylaw would be about the equivalent, maybe a little larger than the one that's out at Shaw Farm.
Oh, okay.
So honestly, not a very large
That's not big at all.
solar array. I think that's about an acre, maybe an acre and a half.
Yeah, you go on Mass Pike and you can see them all over the place.
It could be a 5-acre site or something like that.
Exactly.
So They're keeping it somewhat on a smaller scale for Dracut. That's not to say that at some future date, if some company came in and wanted to do something larger, it certainly could be considered as far as another zoning change. I think what they're looking to avoid is a company coming in and saying, "Hey, we want to do a 10-acre solar farm.
Yep.
We're going to clear cut 10 acres because, of course, you can't have trees." So I think they're trying to avoid something like that, but still provide some sort of solar photovoltaic bylaw, because Massachusetts has, I believe, legislation that says you can't deny solar.
So without a bylaw.
So without it,
You're
it's
subject to-
it's essentially the Wild West. Anybody could come in and say, "This is what I'm doing," and you really have no say on it.
Yeah.
So that's one of the bylaws. To go with that, there's battery storage. So this is not battery storage that you would have in your house,
No.
which can be fairly large. I mean, Tesla, I think, has whole house batteries and stuff like that. This would be essentially to help fuel the grid. So you'd have some company could have multiple battery site storage. Something like
Are they buildings or outside?
They could be in buildings, I believe, but I think they're typically in almost like a shipping container.
Is it associated with the solar panels, or is it just a separate entity
It
altogether?
stores power off the grid, although I suppose they could charge the batteries through
so
solar
basically what
arrays.
happens during the day when you have sunlight, the panels will collect the energy, any excess energy that's not getting used gets stored in the batteries, and when the sun goes down, then you run off the battery power.
So how many of these, how big are these batteries? In terms of, are they the size of a car?
Well, they sell, actually there's a company out there that sells neighborhood panels. So like a large system's like a 250 kilowatt, I think that's what they put in the bylaws. That can run, like in my neighborhood, probably a block worth of houses.
For how long?
Consistently with a battery.
Through
with
the
batteries.
night or through
Yep,
like
through
days?
the night. And then what they do is they put in a natural gas pipeline underneath. So if the batteries do run out, the natural gas kicks in as a backup and charges the batteries when they're not in use.
Until the Biden administration does away with it.
Right. But
gas.
they're actually pretty neat systems. So you can actually, if you build a new housing development, you could be totally off the grid and have it running all on solar panels and a battery with natural gas backup. Most systems have natural gas backups because, if you get a snowstorm and your panels are covered and you can't get them cleaned off, the batteries will drain pretty quickly.
So we had a question here, where's Richard? So if you turned in late, you see that Richard is out tonight. He's out sick, unfortunately, and hopefully he'll be back soon, right?
Yeah.
So what else do we have on that?
So to some degree, some housekeeping stuff that currently on large sites, on large business sites, if you want to have multiple buildings, it's kind of at the discretion of the building commissioner right now, the zoning officer. Yeah. And so they want to actually amend the bylaw to say that, yes, you could in fact have two principal buildings on one lot as long as you meet these criteria. So the lot has to be bigger, stuff like that. So
I could build a house and a carriage house for like my in-laws.
No,
Is that what that is?
so this would be for business use.
Oh, business use, okay. It's not an ADU like they're discussing.
No,
in Lowell.
no. And Dracut has, if you want to call it an accessory dwelling unit, Dracut calls it an in-law suite right now.
Yeah.
But it's very similar, and that has to be within a dwelling unit itself. Access from inside the dwelling unit
Okay.
can only be so large and stuff like that. That will probably be at a future town meeting.
So getting back to that specific warrant article you're talking about, that business one, is the decision is basically left up to the building inspector
Yes.
right now.
Currently. And so they want to clarify that and get it out of his hands. So the planning board typically has
Jurisdiction
the
over it?
jurisdiction over it. Yeah.
So, okay, so then they can decide whether or not they want
They
it.
decide it, and there's criteria. Typically, it has to be 1.5 times the required lot size.
Does it affect buildings that might have multiple commercial units in it, within it, such as the mill that we're in right now? There's all kinds of different building businesses. in
So
there.
there's a lot of buildings, but there's a lot of businesses, but there's only one building.
Okay,
So this would be, if you're in the Navy Yard, Nason's variety store, and then there's
Strip mall.
and then there's an adjacent building, Robert's Jewelers, I believe
Yep.
it is. Over here in Collinsville, we have Top Donut, but there's a vacant lot site, which another building can be built on. That's actually the same lot. So that would permit two principal buildings be built on.
is that why currently there's nothing on that second lot up there, Duncan?
I think they couldn't find a tenant
Oh, okay.
or somebody to build one. And in Dracut Center, Wendy's.
Right.
There's a development going there with the Wendy's, and then there's also talk about putting a Starbucks in there.
Right.
Those are going to be two separate buildings.
Right.
So that gets to more than one principal building on the same lot.
By the way, the Starbucks was taken out of that project. They're going to put something else there.
Are
It's
they?
not going to generate as much traffic as was originally looked at. Although I thought that a Starbucks there would have been good. I mean, not good for me. Not good for me because my wife would be there a lot. You know,
Yeah,
I don't know what your wife. Does she
No,
like
We
Starbucks?
don't drink coffee.
She doesn't drink coffee.
No.
If it was a brewery,
Yes.
then
that
that would be different. That would be
Yeah.
much different. So, all right, go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, so, and then there are use regulations, what's going to be permitted in a zone, what's not permitted in a zone, and going through the different zones. You have B1, 3, 4, and 5. B2, the current B2 zone, there's only 3 lots in Dracut that actually have a B2 zone, which was kind of a professional offices. And so they figured they would take everything that was in a B2 zone and put it to the B3, which is general business. So they're just kind of reorganizing that slightly, not by much.
Right. So far, you've gone through 3 different you've given an overview of 3 different particular changes to the review, to the zoning review.
Yep.
Is there anything there that the public should be concerned about?
Controversial? I honestly don't really think so. There's some areas that they're looking to change zoning from. Typically, they're split lots. So a split lot is when one lot is in 2 different zones.
Yeah.
And there's actually an article to change the zoning bylaw to allow the planning board to make a decision with a public hearing for the applicant or the owner of the land to change from split zoning to making it all the same zone as the front lot
okay.
portion.
So that wouldn't be considered spot zoning?
No, because
it's an
it'd
adjacent.
be the extension of that particular zone to the remainder of the site.
So recently on the corner of the street where I live on Arlington Avenue, and I believe that's Arlington Street, right? There's
Yes.
a big lot there that was maybe 2 or 3 acres, and they rezoned that to be allowable of commercial or mixed use recently, if I'm not mistaken.
On the corner of Arlington and Arlington.
Arlington Ave and Arlington
yes.
Street.
I think that was to put it in the town center overlay district,
Okay.
which allows different business uses, even though the property may have been zoned residential or
Historically
something,
residential,
right?
okay. All right, so what do you have next?
Honestly, it's really just a bunch of, I think,
What, housekeeping
change.
type?
Yeah. So I mean, intensity uses. There was some looking at the regulations that set the zone property sizes for within zones. Initially, the R1 zone is 40,000 square feet. They're looking to keep that, so what they refer to as a builder's acre. R2 zone, which is out towards the golf course, there was some thought about because that was done as an open space subdivision. And most of the house lots are 30,000 square feet or so.
Right.
Changing that from the 2-acre zoning that's required for the house down to an acre. Essentially, make the zoning match what's there.
Okay. So there's no major change?
No, but when there was a rearrangement of members, there was some pushback on that we should maintain the 2-acre zoning there. There was some concern by the Board of Selectmen, in particular Joe Dracut, of how many more lots can be carved out of, how many more lots will be made if you reduce the area required for an R2 lot.
Yeah.
And the short answer was, out of the 500 plus acres that are there, you may get 10 lots.
Oh.
And apparently they thought that was too much building in Dracut.
Oh, really?
So the zoning bylaw review committee decided to maintain the 2-acre zoning because, as one person said, what difference does it make?
Yeah, well.
Well, for that matter, I would say, why not make the whole town 2-acre zoning? Make it 2-acre zoning in Collinsville and make it 2-acre zoning in your neighborhood, because what difference would it make?
Right.
Right.
Most of the lots
I
are
have
already
to knock
developed.
my house down and,
So the R3 zone, which there was talk about reducing that from the 40,000 square feet down to the 22,000 square feet, there was a lot of discussion of why that particular number. And Allison Mnuchin had said that seemed to be the median of what most of the lots are within that neighborhood. So essentially, let's reduce it to what the neighborhood is.
Right.
There would be some lots that would be oversized from that. That could you carve out? Could you subdivide it and create 2 lots? You might be able to, but I would say if that was 1% of all the lots there. If it was reduced to 22,000 square feet, my lot is still pre-existing non-conforming, as would at least half of the other lots in the neighborhood. So
In this area, yeah.
So, I honestly think that the zoning bylaw review committee is kind of missing the mark on what they should be doing on the intensity as far as lot sizes.
Yeah.
But I'm not on the committee.
Yeah, nor would you ever be with the current makeup of the Board of Selectmen.
And I think it's a missed opportunity when you start getting into the business districts and stuff like that.
Is any of these changes that you've said so far going to have an effect on any 40B projects, either currently in the pipeline or in the future?
Absolutely not, because with a 40B project, you take all of these and you
Just throw them out?
throw them in the trash, and okay, this is what we want to do.
Because the state
And where
law-
it doesn't match this, we want a variance.
Okay.
So that's what the process is. It's actually getting a variance for every item that you're not in non-compliance with.
Is there anything else over there in that group of zoning changes that we need to discuss?
I mean, this just really just minor stuff. Over in the Navy Yard, Coventry Gardens, it's an apartment complex.
Yeah.
That is currently zoned business.
Oh, really?
Maybe because back when it was built, it needed to be in a business zone to create apartments, but it's a residential use, so they're looking at changing it back to residential.
Okay.
Which it makes sense.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the zoning changes for particular properties, they all make sense.
Okay, now that is on, what,
That's on Pleasant Street.
Pleasant Street, not too far from the old fire station?
Correct.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, so, I mean, there are probably 6 articles that deal with rezoning a property for those particular reasons. Either it's a split lot and they want to make it more consistent with the area it should be assigned with, or changing it because it's kind of mismatched, like Coventry Gardens that is zoned business currently in a sea of residential.
So is there anything else we need to talk about on that list?
No, so the Board of Selectmen, though this was presented to them last night
Yeah.
for recommendations, Joe Dracut wanted to hold off until he heard the recommendations from the planning board. Although I'm often reminded by the chairman of the board of selectmen that this is our decision, and we don't have to base it on anything.
Oh, yeah.
On other people's recommendations, our decision. It's like, well, make your decision.
Yeah, make a decision. No,
I mean, and the
Joe
reason
doesn't
why
wanna make a decision.
the reason why I would say make your decision absent the planning board is because we want it to be an independent thought. We want the board of selectmen and the planning board to give independent recommendations.
yeah.
And
it
then
could be different from each other.
Absolutely, and let the people decide.
Right, exactly. So, Joe doesn't want to make a decision because what Gordy said earlier, he'd have to read all this material to make a decision. So what he does is he shoves off his decision-making on this issue to, in my view, he shoves it off to somebody else to make the decision, and he says, then he can always fall back.
Right.
Right? He can always fall back and say,
The only issue I have with these articles are the solar and the battery, because I think it brings in opportunities for Dracut to build new subdivisions, maybe where there aren't electrical poles and electricity running into some of these remote places. It gives you the opportunity to build homes there, whereas you could take an acre or two, set up solar panels to power the homes. You can run the power conduits under the ground so you don't have icing issues, knocking down power lines. And then you've got battery backup, so the houses are off the grid. It makes your house more valuable, right? Because you're off the grid, you don't have an electric bill, you don't have, but then you'd have to have obviously like an HOA fee to pay for the maintenance and.
Right.
That's an interesting theory or idea of
Concept, yeah.
building a subdivision that is off the grid.
Right.
That you could essentially have, your solar arrays with the house mounted or ground mounted somewhere, but it runs independently of everything else.
Correct. But here's my issue with the whole thing. Let's throw a hypothetical out there. Let's say John Zimini owns a solar company, and he comes into Dracut and says, "I want to build this subdivision, and I own the solar company." And Joe Dracut says, "You know what? I don't like John Zimini. So
Yeah.
We're going to put all these regulations up that say
doesn't happen, does it?
that we don't want John Zimini. But if he gets somebody else, that's okay."
That's a different thing. Yeah, exactly.
So that's my only issue with that is now they can put up barriers and walls that say, "Oh, you know what? You didn't meet this." They can build their own regulations to say you didn't quite meet this, and they can bend the law a little bit.
Yeah, but these regulations are fairly boilerplate, and these are done they were really taken from other communities to make sure that it
My
met
point is
criteria.
I don't think there should be restrictions. If someone wants to come in with, let's bring in economic development. If someone wants to put a solar farm that's off in the distance somewhere that you can't even see anyway and run lines to it, let them have it.
Yeah, but without the regulations, it can go in. It could go in any zone.
could be a real-
and
But-
it's.
But the regulations can bend both ways, right? They can
Well,
go both
if we
ways.
go with your concept, we could put a porno video shop anywhere.
Yeah.
That's why you need to have regulations.
Right.
And right now in Dracut, if you were to do a video porno
Or adult
type-
entertainment?
adult entertainment, it would have to be in the quarry up there on
Correct.
38.
Correct.
And that was done during my years on the Board of Selectmen.
Because you need a viable location.
You need
for
it, or you
can't zone
constitutionally.
right. You couldn't zone it for the middle of Long Pond.
No,
because
exactly.
you couldn't build it there.
Right, that would be an atrocity in itself. So we had a couple of questions about Beaverbrook Farm. Is there some kind of issue up there? Sean Kelly was asking, any updates on the progress of Beaverbrook Farm conservation land, preserving the buildings? Well, the building that they were banting about for a long time was
The workshop.
The workshop. That is now gone.
That is correct.
That's been taken down. And what are they going to put in there in its place? Parking lot.
Grass, I think.
Grass? No
yeah,
parking?
I didn't think they were doing a parking lot
Okay.
there.
So is there any update
The
on?
pole barn? The pole barn, was that what it was?
Yeah, I know that they're meeting tonight, Sean. They have a meeting at 6 o'clock. I don't know what exactly was on their agenda, although I did get their agenda, and I did remember seeing it, but it wasn't anything that was going to be.
No, I know the full conservation restriction or agricultural restriction has not been placed on it yet.
Yeah.
because they were trying to figure out what are we going to be doing with the property, and then how do you write the restrictions around that.
Yeah. You don't want to put a restriction on it until you know what direction you're going to go, right?
Yeah, but how many years later are we now?
Oh, yeah, forget it. Well, nothing gets done. Hey, we've been waiting for elderly housing at the Richardson Farm on Bridge Street for how many years? I've been off the board.
That's a long time.
Since
And
I've lived in Dracut, I think.
I mean, I've been off the board when we proposed that, putting it up, and we had the funding and everything ready to go, and Joe DeRocco and his cohort stopped it.
Stalled
All
it.
because of Louisburg Square, if we remember correctly. So, Sean, we don't have a real clear update on that. John McDonough's weighing in, saying, hello, sorry we missed you today, Phil and John, at Dinner Club.
I was looking forward. I guess in at least 6 months from now we can go back.
So they went to Cavaliero's. It's an Italian
yes,
restaurant.
I'd never been there on Lawrence Street in Lowell.
Yeah.
It's really good.
That's
I've been
what I
a couple
heard.
times. Really
Well,
good.
they rated it a 10.5 score for that
Wow.
restaurant.
Yeah.
Wow.
Steak on the Stone is what I recommend. That's good. It's pretty
It's supposed to be good down there?
Yeah, it's really
yeah,
good.
Yeah. Well, very good. John, nice to see you watching us. I hope everything is well with you and your family, and we're going to catch up soon, I'm sure. So let's talk a little bit more about what's going on with the Board of Selectmen, right? There were a couple issues that came up last night. One was we had the Economic Development Planner up before the board, giving the board his review. Did you watch that?
Yes, I caught it in a rerun.
So what did you think?
We're missing the mark with economic development. That's I suppose my take on it.
Gordy, did you get a chance to see it at
I
all?
did not, no.
Well, I watched it, and I want to preface my remarks by saying, because everybody thinks when you talk ill of something that you're right away attacking the person that's in the position. Well, the bottom line here is I'm not attacking anybody. I'm attacking what's going on here with economic development in town. Dan Phelps is a nice guy. He's a fine writer, and he's a good communicator in terms of putting stuff out on the social media. But somehow I think that he's out of his league on what a planner should actually be doing. And I know that Heather Santiago Hutchins last night asked him some questions without really stepping on his toes to the point, but asked him what he is doing in terms of planning for some sort of future large-scale commercial development. What did he answer to that? Yeah.
Nothing memorable, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, that position is a valuable position in town. And some of the questions I would be asking Dan is, have you reached out to the state economic development resources that are out there to see what they can do to help bring in some large-scale commercial development in the form of $50 million or more? I mean, you can knock Jim Duggan for a lot of things, but Jim Duggan had a vision of wanting to get that kind of economic development that was going to impact the tax rate immediately. We have all this talk, Gordy, by school committee members and Board of Selectmen members that economic development is thriving in Dracut, and that is a fallacy. Because if you don't have something with $50 to $100 million investment into the town, you're not even gonna, it's not even a blip on the screen to change any tax revenues, right?
Maybe a solar farm might work.
Well, isn't there a solar farm or something planned for the old dump up at DPW?
So if it's capped, it needs to be capped, and then they have the ability to put out a request for a lease.
Why would that need to be tapped?
Capped.
Capped, rather.
Capped, because it's an uncapped dump.
And it would still,
It still has.
is it permeating hazard material?
It
Gases.
might be. It might be. And it's like, it's until it's capped, it's considered unsafe.
Oh, boy. So at any rate, I don't see economic development to the magnitude that we need. And to really have an impact in economic development, and the little bit I know about it is that if we put something in today, if somebody came to us today and say we were going to build an Amazon,
Right.
let's say out there by,
Everyone would go crazy.
Oh,
we
they
don't
go-
want that. Or the traffic's going to be
but
terrible.
there are so many places we could do something like that.
Yep.
Down, on the river,
113 or
113,
110.
110, whatever. I mean, that would bring in solid revenue, but that kind of a development isn't going to occur overnight,
No, something like that is certainly not.
right?
The development over at the corner of Loon Hill and Broadway, I mean, that was what, essentially 4 years in the making
Yeah.
to get the Arbors there, and then as soon as the Arbors is there, then Circle Health said, oh, a medical facility there would be nice there, and then Genesis, of course, was kind of like the third leg of that stool where they were going to do a rehab. Unfortunately, that fell through. But those three business entities going in there would have been in the magnitude, I think, of about $75 million.
Yeah, I think the reason that fell through is the actual person who was driving that bus got canned from here, and the new administration doesn't have any wherewithal to go up. Most of what they're doing in town today is smoke and mirrors. And
Jim was very good at not just listening for businesses looking to come into Dracut, but listening for businesses that were trying to go into other communities
Right.
that were being kind of given the runaround, and Jim would contact them and say,
and that's
"Come
where,
to Dracut."
That's where Dan Phelps falls on his face, because he's not looking in any kind of economic development brochures for across the country. There might be a country in California. There might be a company in California looking, or in Texas looking for a northern site, and it would be something you should have something developed, a plan developed that you could send to a company like that.
I know that Amazon is looking for new data center space.
See?
And they have,
And is that
they
storage
have
space?
McLean. Well, they just need to build a building with power. And,
Right.
But that's because the cloud and the AI,
Right.
the need for data centers is growing tremendously.
And there's less traffic in that kind of a thing.
right, it's just a data center.
Yeah,
It's
Right.
just got
very
computers
few
running. You
people
need
in it.
power
Yeah.
to it.
But there's
Obviously.
very few people there. It would
Correct.
It would be a piece of economic development that would give us more tax revenue.
Right, they'd have a handful of people that would.
But the
be there to
economic
maintain
spillover
it.
wouldn't be there, right?
Right.
In terms of
So the tax value of that is actually in the business property, and not so
Right,
much in the
correct.
property tax, the
Correct.
real estate tax.
correct.
Right, but they would be generating billions of dollars out of that
So-
location, right? So something like that. Did you even send an email to Amazon and say, "Hey, I hear rumors that you're looking for a place to put a new data center. How about Dracut?
Look
Come
and
see
drink
us."
it. Yeah. No, there's no innovation like
you know
that.
what I mean? Like,
I mean, you've got a manager that will tell you, well, we don't have the staff to do that kind of outreach. So what you're doing is you're like the hamster on the wheel, just keeping afloat,
but I mean, if you just Google it, like,
right.
just what companies are looking for, to build or
But the state has
probably already has all that.
economic development
Right.
opportunities for communities.
Right.
And if you're not in that pipeline, if you haven't made some kind of connection with the state to say, hey, we're here, we're open for business, let's try to get some big development.
So
in here.
to that point, that was one reason why I thought my participation in NEMCOG was always very important,
Mm-hmm.
because NEMCOG always saw somebody from Dracut at the meeting. I mean, for years before that, what was Dracut getting from NEMCOG? I don't think much. But as soon as you see somebody there, so if Dan was going to Boston or calling up Boston and making himself known to those who know stuff, then, oh, geez, Dan had given me a call last week. Hey, this might fit for him or something like that.
Do you often go on the Economic Development Facebook page?
No.
Well, I had a little birdie tweet in my ear earlier this week about some exchanges between Josh Taylor and the economic, I assume it's Dan Phelps, the planner, because he was going back and forth on a couple of issues. And the person said to me, geez, that was kind of rude, the way Dan answered Josh's particular question. I forget what the question was. I asked Josh to come on and make a comment, but he said he was going to try to either call in or stop by at some point during the show. But I'm still pursuing that to see why would you make those kinds of comments? Why would you do that? I mean, don't you want to be friendly? You know, don't you want to be friendly to everybody and not be like? It was a post about promoting Dracut businesses. So there was a business on there that is owned by this couple who lives in Dracut, but their business is really in Methuen, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, Josh was saying, well, why aren't you promoting that? Well, Methuen doesn't pay me, Dracut does. What kind of an answer is that?
It's still Dracut residents.
They're Dracut residents and they pay taxes, and actually that business is contributing to your salary, because if they don't have the business, they don't have the money to pay their taxes. Correct?
And John, just another thing on economic development, he could go to neighboring towns, like what do you do, right? Like Lowell.
Right.
My data center thing, we talked about the old mills over in the old manufacturing plant Lowell. Markley moved in there. They're a huge data center on the East Coast now that people in the Boston area, everyone goes there. And really they're kind of the only player in town around this area, in the Merrimack Valley anyway, and there's a lot of tech companies along the 128 border. So something like that. I mean, go meet with Lowell. How did you guys get Markley to come in?
Right.
Lowell? How did you get him?
Right.
You know, how did you make that happen? We'd like to do something in Dracut.
Angel is chiming in. She's listening while she's at the store. And she said there's a faithful follower right there.
Well, wait, is the store in Dracut?
Oh, I don't know. Good point. But Angel said that, you know, it was about promoting Dracut businesses on Inside Lowell, and one of them was the Karen business.
Oh, okay.
All right, Karen Lighting, I think it is. if I'm not mistaken.
Mechanical, HVAC.
Mechanicals, okay, whatever it is. But they're owned and operated by somebody in Dracut. So, I mean, I don't get it. Plus, you are affording all of your information to go into Lowell, and you're promoting Inside Lowell, which, by the way, we are members of Inside Lowell. Phil and I write for that, and we share some of our thoughts with Inside Lowell, by the way. It's great, and they share us, so it makes us go, expand.
Yep.
And that's what it's all about, getting business and getting people to come in and watch what we're doing here. Another thing is, let's see, Telly, where are you? Kevin Telly said that, we need to be open to new developers. Yeah, I agree. I agree, Kevin. I mean, I think we're trying to stymie housing developers, because it doesn't bring enough
The baggage with
tax
Right.
revenue. It brings other types of issues. It doesn't pay for the kids in school and things of that nature, or the trash pickup or whatever else.
I think a perfect thing, though, would be the data center, because it doesn't need major highways, you know what I mean? And it brings in a lot of revenue.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
So look at, we talked about zoning, we talked about the charter review and what have you, not the charter review, but the zoning review.
Yep.
And the Board of Selectmen also brought up by way of a placement on the agenda by Tony Archinsky about the charter review. So your recollection may not be the same as my recollection, right? But the original charter that changed the form of government here from a selectman-run town to a town manager form of government, that charter review took place 35 years ago.
1985
Okay.
or so, yeah.
So whatever amount of years that is, and people like Roger Daigle were elected to the Charter Commission. So we've had discussions about this numerous times here and other places, and in the process of making changes to the charter, instead of going for a full-blown charter review like the original charter called for in 25 years, now it's over 40, close to
Almost
40 years.
40, yeah.
that the elected charter review said that every 10 years you need to review this. So the Board of Selectmen piecemealed it. I was part of that when I was on the board too. I wanted a full-blown review, but I got shot down, and we ended up picking through it and making different changes. And then after I left, there were more changes made, changes that allowed for a person like Ann Vandal to become the manager without real good review or credentials, right?
Yeah, I say that they reduced the stringent requirements for town manager.
Yeah, I mean, one of the requirements was you couldn't have been an employee here. It wouldn't promote the assistant town manager.
Right.
Sometimes you wouldn't want the assistant town manager under any particular town manager to become the manager.
Right.
Because if you're going to change, you want full house change, right?
Correct, and you're right. You're fresh look at it.
Right,
Things.
and from new eyes and new ears and new thoughts comes better things, I believe.
Yeah, and I think they reduced the requirement of having needed to be an assistant town manager or town manager for 5 years previous or something like that.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
have 5 years worth of experience.
But that change was made under Duggan, when Duggan was here, those changes. And
Yes.
I wasn't here during that time. And it was all, that bus was driven by Joe DeRocco because his end game was to get Ann Vandal as the manager. And speaking of that, when you're watching the Board of Selectmen meeting, do you get the sense that Ann is like angry or not happy when there's questions thrown to her? And I mean,
I find it more defensive.
that she's defensive?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what
Yeah.
that's the word I would use.
I mean, last night I'm watching.
It is what it is. That's how it is.
Do that again? Do that again?
It is what it is. That's how it is. I don't know what to tell you, but that's the way it is.
Right. And
like what?
Or it's, we don't have staff to do that.
Yeah.
Right?
I'd love to give you that, but I don't have the chef to do it.
Yeah, which we're going to get into a little bit of the goals if we can go on. But let's get back to the charter review. So they went through this whole diatribe of different reasons. They wanted the newest version of the charter review, which the Board of Selectmen passed and the legislature approved. That, by the way, it had no input from the citizens. Isn't the
Correct.
charter the citizens?
Yes, and
That's the spirit of it,
And
right?
that would be my point, is that this is a document that the citizens say, this is how we wish to be governed.
Right. So Tony's point was just that he wanted some sort of input from the citizens of Dracut. And that went around the horn for a couple of minutes, and it was an interesting comment that was made by, this is going to be 2 shows in a row that I'm complimenting the chairman. I mean, it's unusual, but the bottom line is and I agree with her, she did not want to have a rehash of committee members being on another committee appointed by the Board of Selectmen. That she was thinking that she wanted a way to find fresh ideas or new ideas. Of course, when you're in a small town like this, I don't know how many people are going to come out and want to be part of the government if they're not already somewhat interested and involved. So they may be tainted.
And I would think in a committee such as this,
Right.
That probably strikes even more true.
Right.
That you're looking for people who are very government wonky.
Right, and know the government.
And know the
some of the
government, and
different
know-
stuff.
and know
yeah.
how
you
the
almost
structures
have
work.
to have a little of that to actually
do.
write a charter, right? Like to build it and understand.
But likewise,
You know.
to Allison's point, it'd be nice to get fresh people in
Right.
there with some
People-
fresh ideas.
It's not the same names that keep coming over and over again.
So to my surprise, instead of the 5 members of the board making appointments or putting their people on, and the manager having one and one at large, it turned completely around, and it was they headed towards an election of a charter commission. And Tony made the motion to have an elected, because he said, I really don't have either way. If I was sitting there, I would have been staunchly for an elected charter
Absolutely.
commission, because that's the closest form to a independent document from the town hall, the manager, and the Board of Selectmen, the current people in charge. It has to be visionary, that
Yes.
where you're going for the future, right?
Right.
And where you are today. Because the charter of 40 years ago isn't a real good document for today.
Correct.
I mean, 40 years ago, you didn't have the internet, you didn't have high-speed internet, you didn't have
have
all of this
solar
stuff. So, I mean, you need to be more innovative in that, right? So, when Tony made that motion, I said, where is he going to get the votes for this? Because I immediately, although with Allison Janess, the chairperson, saying what she said, I thought that she might be for an elected commission until she finds out who might run for it. But in the bottom line is that Tony made the motion to have an elected commission, and who seconded the motion? Can you guess?
I didn't watch.
Can you guess who would have seconded the motion?
Hutchins.
No. Did you? You know. You watched it. So you know. Do you know who seconded it?
I'm trying to recall.
Joe DeRocco
Joe
actually
DeRocco did.
seconded that motion, which shocked me because, Joe doesn't want anything that he can't put his fingers on. And to have a 7-person elected charter commission in the May election is going to be something to behold,
Yeah.
right?
So
And
did they actually vote it
they
through?
it was unanimous.
Unanimous, huh?
It was unanimous vote, which was good. So we're going to be keeping a close eye on that because I
So
think
how do
we
you
want-
apply? It's just
well,
like,
they haven't set up the process yet. They're going to have to do that pretty quick because May isn't that far away if
Right.
you're going to do it.
So
right
yeah,
away.
whether they're using the call-in center as a consultant or some other
Well, they're gonna need
organization,
a facilitator.
They would certainly need
They're
that.
and they will need a facilitator. There's no question about it. And somebody brought that up on the board and said, we'll have to find money for
and
that.
we'll need to bring them on board a little sooner than.
Yeah, but do you know the main reason for them not wanting to do the appointed version of it? Well, because it would have been too much work and it would have been too much volatility in who would be coming to, and how much you have to listen, how much time you're going to have to spend on it and all of that. So, I mean, a charter commission should be charged with coming back with a valid document within a year. It shouldn't
I would
be
think.
more
I
than
would
a
think.
year.
All told, it will probably end up being a 2-year process.
Yeah, because it's got to get through town meeting, and then it's got to go through the legislature. So that's a
Correct.
process that takes more than a year or so. So it's going to be interesting to see who goes out for that, and that's
There
going to be
was
great.
one comment that was made that I found somewhat humorous, and it was about having an election for this new commission. Was it going to be expensive?
Yeah.
And my first thought is, democracy is very expensive
Yeah.
to begin with. If you don't want a government that's expensive, then you have a dictatorship.
Right, exactly.
Because then it requires no money.
I will tell you this, there has been some out there saying that maybe it's time for Dracut to be looking at a city form of government. No, I would, I'm not one of those people that want to change the town form of government into a city. You can have a town council and a manager, and you can make it a stronger town council and make the manager acquiesce to a lot of things
Yep.
that has to be done. What do we have?
Someone called and asked if she said she thinks you have to have like 50% of voters or something to even get the charter thing on the ballot.
What's that? You have to have how many?
50%.
I don't know, something.
No, I don't know if that's true. 20% of the voters to get it on the ballot. I don't think that's true. I think that the Board of Selectmen can request that we have a charter review by elected. I think there's a state mechanism for that, and I don't believe that it is a signature gathering process.
No, so our charter right now, when it was rewritten by the
Yeah.
selectmen, said that the selectmen will essentially review this.
Yeah, but the
every
original
10
one-
years.
yeah.
Correct. But their council indicated that it doesn't preclude the selectmen from saying we want an elected
Right.
commission. So he thought it was very appropriate that you could put that together.
Hey, we do a lot of talking about the bad things that the Board of Selectmen does here in town. But in this instance, I think that they did the right thing if they really mean what they say in terms of they want hands off of it, and it should be hands off with it, because there's going to be some pretty intense meetings going on with that.
Yes,
because-
and I would also caution people that because somebody brings up an academic idea doesn't mean that they're necessarily in favor of it or against it. They want to bring up the idea so it has the light of day, and then
Right.
if it withers away under its own weight, then it withers away. But
Yeah.
there's no reason why you can't bring up the idea.
Right,
My
right.
boss always says, throw something up on the chalkboard so we can throw spitballs at it.
Right, right. And that's how sausage is made. I mean, good sausage is made by a lot of arguing and a lot of pieces of stuff that's not very good sometimes, right? But yeah, I think they made the right move. So we got an election coming up in May, which is not that far away, and I'm hearing some rumblings of people that may be running for Joe DeRocco's position. It's the single seat that's up on the Board of Selectmen, and there are several names out there that have been thrown out, and I'm still hearing that Joe may still run.
I think he is. I mean,
But,
that's my contention all since three
Yeah, well,
years ago.
you know.
Since he won the last one.
Yeah, but he barely won, and I think that it.
I've heard rumors of who's running too.
Who'd you hear?
Richard Silvio.
Richard Silvio. Yeah, I don't. I've heard his name a number of times on a couple of different issues, but I think Richard has his work cut out right
in
now
college
with
right now.
college and his future. I mean, he's 19 years old, but do I think that he's a viable candidate for the future? I think he is. I think he's somebody that would be passionate. If he doesn't choose to go into the priesthood, who knows? You know, he might be. Who knows? And he wouldn't be the first priest to be in an elected office,
Right.
right? And so I mean, he could live in Dracut and still be a selectman or be a school committee
Right.
person and be a priest. Who knows? But that's one of the things that he's, I'm sure he's going to think about. But there are some interesting names. One was Warren Shaw, which I think would be a good choice for somebody to challenge a guy like Joe DeRocco.
Yeah, I mean, I
Do you ever think
I think Warren brought it up himself that he
Yeah.
he was considering it.
Yeah. And then I've heard a few other names. Of course, Mr. Janess, the guy who, could only get elected Republican state committeeman because nobody else was interested in it. He keeps bashing you.
Well, he does.
He keeps thinking you're going to run, right? Again.
Well, as I say, I own a lot of real estate in that mind, and it's too bad I own real estate in a slum.
Yeah, yeah. Very good. Gordy, have you got any interest in running
No.
for office at all? But I know that Don Plummer is a person who might be running. I've heard some other names.
I've heard that,
I've
yeah.
heard Josh Taylor's name bandied about again. That it might be time. I've heard Allison Volpe's name thrown out there that she may run. Maybe not this time. There are a number of people. So that's going to be an interesting watch over the holiday season, because if you're going to run or you're not going to run, I think you really have to solidify that by December and January.
And I think oftentimes you hear the name dropped by December because
Yeah.
the hope is that you can kind of chase away other
Chase
people
other
who,
people
who
away,
are
that's right.
just thinking about it but not really sure.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. So we talked about the town warrant and the town meeting, which is coming up in November 13th, I think it is.
13th, yeah.
So, and that's the one where we're not supposed to have any real financial issues.
So
on
it's
it.
predominantly non-financial items,
Zoning
although there
changes.
are a couple of financial items, I think.
There's one on
for-
there
to
about.
bury,
Is
for
there
the-
one on there about schools?
Yeah, there's something about adjustments to the budgets and
Adjustments,
stuff like
a
that.
$700,000 adjustment.
Yeah, that's what I think I heard. Something like
And I heard that today, and there's a $757,000 adjustment that has to be made because someone, I don't want to really point the fingers, but someone in the financial realm of the town dropped the ball and underestimated per pupil spending. Did you hear that? And that was on last night. It
Yeah.
kind of flew right under the radar.
So they're under net school spending, or
They would have been if they don't adjust it. They need to adjust it. And there's also a lot more controversy going on about the bottom line of chargebacks. What's your take on that? There was quite a bit of stuff on chargebacks.
Yeah, from my understanding, there are items that could be could carry a chargeback, and they haven't. I'm not sure what those particular items are, but
Yeah.
this talk about essentially grabbing back as much as can be grabbed back. by
Well,
the town.
I know that Renee Young and Volpe were upset with Ann Vandal over the chargebacks, that she's revisiting it. And I think it's a responsibility of the manager to revisit that every budget cycle, because you don't know,
So what is the kind, like what would be an example of a chargeback to the school? Would it be plowing the drive?
Plowing,
trash.
Trash.
things of that nature.
Insurance.
Insurance, one of the, or administration of their payroll, where the payroll passes through, something of that nature. But there's a big chargeback coming, I think, from the charter school. And innovation, anybody that's on an IEP that might have an outplacement, that chargeback doesn't go to Innovation Academy, it comes back to the town. So if you've got a student that now who went to this academy and now needs an IEP that involves being placed outside of the system, that could be up to $300,000 or more. That gets charged back to the town, not to Innovation. So there's a lot of up in arms about that. So that's going to be interesting to watch also. What else do we have? Are we talking about? Oh, I know what I wanted to get to. Let's talk a little bit about schools. Recently, we posted on our Facebook page about former teacher Robert Moulton, who got fired from his position here at Dracut High School for reading a salacious poem to his class. And over the course, and this was back in 2018 or 19 when he got fired.
Prior to COVID, right?
It was prior to COVID, but there was a lot of different issues going on, and he was arrested for trespassing, or allegedly arrested for trespassing. He had some issues going on, and I guess he came to some resolution to that. And then we hadn't heard from him. And now, over the last month or so, he's been around Dracut turning some heads, because he's in a zone where he's ranting and raving about different issues concerning Stephen Stone, the school committee, the town manager at the time, or town government, and he's looking to, get his life back. So we posted some stuff about it, and I got documents from FOIA request relative to what exactly happened, who was involved, where he was, and it was pretty interesting, and I'm going to try to put it all together in a post in the future. But I found out that there was a video at the Dunkin' Donuts relative to him sitting at Dunkin' Donuts across from the Lakeview Ave administration building, and in that video, he is seen ranting and raving about Stephen Stone. My fear is, I can have disagreements with everybody, but I never want to see anybody harmed or hurt, and I don't want to see a tragedy, a Columbine-type tragedy. And I'm not saying that could happen here, but in this day and age, you don't know, right? So I wanted to make sure that
Sometimes
that people
when
know.
there's smoke, there's fire.
Right.
Sometimes.
So I requested the video, and I finally got it. So I'm going to ask Nate to put the video on. This is the first time I'm seeing it, so I don't think there's any sound to it. So you can leave our mics on, and we can talk about it as we're watching it. You want to throw that up there, Nate? So I believe is a video of him pulling into, this is the parking lot. And this is a camera shot, I believe, is him driving in to the Dunkin' Donuts. So this is outside. So the story goes that he goes in there to get a coffee and what have you, and he becomes a little enraged over and talking, but you can't really hear him, and he takes, but you'll see his hands flailing and what have you, I guess. And it took the staff by surprise.
Looks like she's talking.
After this video is played, or after he leaves the building, he actually goes across to, you see the staff coming around. He actually goes across to the administration building. Now you see the staff watching and what have you, because they're a little nervous at this point.
Right, there's something odd going on.
Something very odd has grabbed their attention.
You can hear her talking.
All right, so there you see him. Now he's leaving, and he's going over to the administration building. And on his way to the administration building, the people inside the Dunkin' Donuts called over to the superintendent's office, warned Cindy Curtis that he was looking like he was coming over because he asked about Stephen Stone and what have you. And he ended up leaving. Well, Cindy called the police department, and before the police came, he left the building. But he ended up going to the actual police department, and they had a little exchange there and what have you. But he didn't really do anything to get to cross the line to get arrested. But it was enough to raise a lot of eyebrows. That a couple of days later, that was on a Friday. A couple of days later was a Board of Selectmen meeting. So that would have been 2 weeks ago, and he showed up at the Board of Selectmen meeting. And I had information that he was confronted there also. And anybody today, after the bombing of the marathon, anybody carrying a backpack and is looking distressed, you get very upset about, you get nervous about, right?
Right.
And he was carrying a backpack that day, and supposedly he got, they talked to him, and he ended up leaving the meeting. But he wanted to speak before the Board of Selectmen, because on a letter that he had sent the board back 5 years ago or 7 years ago, which I have a copy of the letter, and we'll be posting that stuff in the near future. But we just want everybody to be aware that these things are happening, and we certainly want to bring attention to, so that we don't let something tragic happen. What say you about this, Phil?
Yeah, hopefully he can find some peace with the demons that are bothering him, and it can be difficult sometimes, though.
Oh yeah. Do you have anything that you want to?
Well, we just hope that, hopefully he's just trying to make his voice heard and not anything else. And not saying, even though we're just bringing this to light to make people aware, we're not saying he's going to do anything, right?
No.
Just be on alert.
And I mean, there's a lot of talk online about it, and there was a lot of give and take on it, and many of the students that he had over the years stood up for him, and rightfully so.
I saw that.
Rightfully so. He may have been one of the best
teachers
there are, but when you see something like this happen and someone gets this distressed, you need to help the person get the help they need to get it settled in, So that was one of the things we wanted. I was going to talk briefly about the manager's goals, but we're running out of time. I wanted to get back into the Israeli attacks over the weekend, and we have a video from, I believe it's Harvard University, where there was several groups at Harvard. Now, it's one thing, as I said earlier, it's one thing to be an adversary for peace and calm, and that everybody deserves to live, and everybody deserves to have the right to exist. But it's another thing to be supporting a group like Hamas, who is a terrorist. They are terrorists. Joe Biden gave back $6 million, or released $6 million that was being held, $billion that was being held in a bank in South Korea, and he used it as an exchange for hostages, which we should never do anyways. And I'm saying this fully aware that one of my family members could be a hostage, but you can't negotiate with hostage takers. You just can't. You gotta do it through strength. And now, lo and behold, while they were accepting making this exchange of hostages, they were already in the planning stages, and no one is going to tell me that Iran wasn't involved. No one is going to be able to convince me that there isn't evidence that Iran had something to do with this in the planning stages and facilitating Hamas with millions of dollars. They give them $100 million a year just to operate, right? So we have that video from Harvard, and we're going to play that right now. So if you can switch on to...
This originally aired on Fox Business.
On Fox, okay.
From the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education, New York Post columnist Ricky Schlock. Ricky, good to see you.
Good to see you.
What's your take on this? Students now at Stanford, Yale, Columbia join students at Harvard supporting Hamas. Ricky, it's a terror group on the level of ISIS. It's slaughtering babies, children, senior citizens, women, entire families. What's your reaction to this?
I mean, it's horrendous to see that there are 33 student organizations at Harvard, which is arguably our most prestigious university in this country, who've said that they hold the Israeli regime entirely responsible for the unfolding violence. I mean, it's absolutely shocking to see more and more student groups piling on. And I have to say, like, as somebody who's a member of Gen Z, who's 23 years old, who follows a bunch of my friends on Instagram, it's shocking to see these parallel realities as I see kids that I knew in the same classrooms, half of whom are posting the images of the grotesque violence and terrorism that's taking place, and the other half of whom are posting their support for Palestine and for Hamas and for the people who have perpetrated these unthinkable crimes against civilians.
You know, Harvard's president, Ricky, again criticized for not condemning those student groups who back Hamas. Former Treasury Secretary and former Harvard President Larry Summers says he's, quote, sickened by their silence. He feels alienated from the school. And Harvard President Claudine Gay said our students have the right to speak for themselves, but they don't represent the university. So now free speech is the excuse for not condemning?
Well, so the president did today say that they view it as terrorist atrocities. Unfortunately, I think those of us who are champions of free speech are put in often a really uncomfortable situation where it's even the most detestable speech needs to be upheld as someone's right to express it, but that does not protect them from the fact that we should all be very vociferously condemning the fact that there are 40 babies that are dead, nearly a dozen Americans, more than 1,000 civilians right now. And so that just because they do have free speech does not protect them from rightfully being condemned for standing behind a terrorist organization.
You know, so the websites of the most prestigious university in the country, they're posting about climate change, about Sustainability Week, nothing about what Israel says is the greatest slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust. I mean, you know, the author Jennifer Say, she formerly was with Levi Strauss. She's tweeted that universities, corporate DEI departments, leftist activists now euphemize murders. And
yeah, bring it back to us. Last night on Fox, and I watch Fox and CNN, and I try to get a feel for what the other side is thinking and saying, and some of the stuff that they're saying on CNN is just abhorrent also. But on Fox, Alan Dershowitz, who is a liberal, an outright liberal who just believes in the Constitution and he doesn't care which side of the aisle you sit on, but he was a professor there for many years. He took off on them on Harvard like no tomorrow. What do you think? Why is this happening today in our society, Gordy? That there's becoming, we are less and less affected by these things each year.
Well, because it doesn't hit people's home. And I saw a clip from The View today, Sunny, I forget her last name.
Yeah.
She was supporting Hamas. She said,
Oh my God.
Yep. And then actually I couldn't believe it, but Joy Behar stepped up and says, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
She said they attacked first. They're going to people's homes, pulling them out, cutting their heads off. Israel isn't doing that. Hamas is doing that.
Right.
So how can you sit there and support a terrorist organization? So they were breaking, and then she kind of kept her mouth shut once she knew that Joy and Whoopi were against her. She was like, okay, maybe I crossed the line here.
Yeah.
Maybe I went too
the
far.
bottom line is the Jewish state has bent over backwards to allow the Palestinian state to exist by giving them the prime Gaza Strip, a prime real estate right on the Mediterranean. And to say that Israel isn't doing everything they can, they gave up all of this prime land. Phil?
My understanding is that the state of Israel allows somebody to practice the religion of their choice.
Right.
Which is not what is permitted in the Gaza Strip.
Right, exactly. I mean, kids in elementary school and young kids, there's a state-run media that has a cartoon. And I'm trying to search for that cartoon. And the cartoon is all about Palestinian kids and Jewish kids and how they're the Palestinian kids are taught in school how to hate Jews. And I mean, how can you deal with a country or a group that all they want to do is, number one, destroy every single and annihilate every single Jew first, and then second, they want to death to America? How do you justify that?
You can't. And the thing is you saw Representative Tlaib today, that she was asked and she kind of she stepped back.
She was running away, yeah.
And she and I get it, she's a Palestinian person and she wants to support Palestine, but I think we talked about this before the show.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, we're Americans, right? We want to support Americans, but we don't support the KKK, who happen to be Americans.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
We don't support a terrorist organization.
We don't support terrorist Americans either.
Right.
Right. You know.
So you shouldn't be supporting the Hamas, even though they're Palestinian, because they're terrorists.
Right. And I understand that over the last 3 or 4 days since the attacks occurred on Israeli grounds, that Israel has been sending notices, texts, and notices to the Palestinian people that leave or you will die.
Right. This area is getting bombed.
It's getting annihilated. So they're giving them plenty of warning before they go in. And it's a very, very, very touchy situation over there, and it could spill over. How do you think, Phil, that the president handled his support of Israel over the last couple of days?
I mean, I suppose what I expected that he would say.
Right.
Although he waited Monday because it was a quote-unquote holiday.
They were,
and they were all on vacation.
He was they put a lid on Saturday.
Right, but
he had a
no,
barbecue.
that was Monday.
Oh, was it Monday?
That was Monday, which was a holiday, Columbus Day, and there was no staff in the White House. Peter Doocy was like, "There's no one here. All the doors are locked."
Wow, it's just amazing that this could happen. But you know, he also made mention yesterday and this morning that the rules of war should be in play. You know what? I think Israel is not thinking about any rules right now.
Not when they're doing atrocities.
Not when they're doing the atrocities. The Bible does say an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Correct?
But you have to read in context.
But you have to keep it in context. Right. But so I think that there's going to be hell to pay, and God forbid if Iran even makes, or the other militant group out of Lebanon, Lebanese. Lebanon, if they interfere at all or get involved,
they're sending some missiles.
There's going to be a problem.
Yep.
There's going to be a problem with the United States. So, yeah, you have anything else to say in closing?
No.
And it went again just so fast. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. Gordy, send us home.
Folks, as always, join our conversation on our Facebook page. John's willing to have a good conversation or a fight, as my wife would call it, with you. And we thank you for watching our show. And remember, when it's Wednesday and it's 6:30, it's What's Happening Dracut. Good night, Dracut.
Everybody. Good night.